Hello everyone, this is LockOS, and today in Star Citizen, we're covering Aegis Dynamics Day at Invictus 2023. Aegis Dynamics is one of the larger ship manufacturers in the verse, and it is actually one of the big military contractors in the verse between them and their competitor, Anvil Aerospace, which will appear on the show floor Tuesday, noon, Eastern Seaboard time. So today and tomorrow, as well as a bit on Tuesday, depending on where you live, Aegis Dynamics is going to be on the show floor. Aegis Nautilus, we're going to start off with the Aegis Nautilus and the Holo viewers this time. Give a little bit of variety to where I start off every video, make things a bit more interesting. So with the Aegis Nautilus, I'm going to give this a very hard pass. And I'll tell you right off the bat, if you do back the ship and buy the ship, do expect it to not be in the game for a while. It is a very cool idea. It's a mine-laying ship. So, no, it is not a mining ship like the Mole and the Prospector. It's an actual ship that deploys mines. It might also be able to deploy turrets, like automated defense turrets, because they might come in like the same rough size and tech as a mine. However, none of the either mines or deployable space turrets are in-game. Plus, the whole idea behind deploying mines is that you need to basically protect an area and claim it as your own. So that might also make the ship a little bit hard to use as a solo player. If you are part of a group and an org and you kind of like the idea of like laying mines as a trap, this ship could be for you, but it's still a very hard, I would say it's a very hard case for me to actually support you buying this, to recommend buying this ship, because unfortunately this ship just is not on the roadmap. It's not on the roadmap, and the tech required for it is not on the roadmap. I would not be surprised if, like certain other ships, like the Banu Merchantman, you could buy this ship right now and still wait an additional 5 more years for it to come out into the verse. And yeah, I say that knowing that there are certain other ships in the game that people have bought and are still not in the game, like the Banu Merchantman. Plus, I do even think the ship is a couple years old, so I do feel bad for the original buyers of the ship. Yeah. Aegis Nautilus, cool idea. Would not recommend it unless you are really into it. Plus, I would also say, because it's a larger ship, if someone in your org already has a Nautilus, don't bother. It's going to be one of those ships you're only going to need one of. And not only will you need only one of them, it's such a unicorn that you really don't really need it. Plus, oh, that's right, plus crew. That's the other thought I was going to have. You're going to need crew to man the Nautilus, so don't bother getting it if someone in your org already has one. Now, for a ship that's a bit more solo player friendly, you'll still need crew to run this, but not as much crew as a Nautilus. We have the Aegis Vulcan. This, too, is a ship that I don't believe is going to be in-game for a long time, and that is primarily because, like with the Aegis Nautilus, its tech isn't in the game, and the tech for it is also not being actively developed on the roadmap. So this is a bit it is a bit likely to come out sooner than a Nautilus, just because it's a smaller ship, and we sort of have some of the mechanics, like we do have refueling in-game, but unfortunately, the core drone tech that it needs, because this ship uses drones to do all the refueling, repairing, and rearming work, is not in game yet, and it's not on the roadmap. Plus, the ship itself is not on the roadmap, so don't expect this ship to come out for quite a while. Plus, I don't think, even though it is very much a support ship like this that can rearm and refuel out in the field would be seemingly useful for Squadron 42, this is not a Squadron 42 ship. So, I love it. I personally have it, but it was one of those things where it was a more hopeful time for Star Citizen, let's say. Well, we weren't expecting to... I bought the ship, I believe, when it was on concept, and that was... I can't tell you how many years at this point. It's been at least, I would say, 4 years, and the ship hasn't been out yet, so do be very much have buyer beware on these concept ships. CIG can and will take their sweet time. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. The good news is with a lot of these concept ships is if you do happen to have one, the later they produce the ship, generally the higher the quality of the ship is. It's just that you're spending a lot of money because these concept ships tend to be the larger ships. You're spending quite a bit of money on a ship that isn't out yet, that might not be out yet for a long while, and the ship they'll give to you as a loaner ship might not be a ship that you like. So just keep in mind just keep in mind those things, and you'll be fine. We're getting to this ship here soon, because this is another ship that spent quite a lot of time in development, purgatory. We'll get back to that once soon, the Aegis Redeemer. Go ahead and run now. My character's thirst is already at 81%. I did actually drink before I got to this started recording, but then I had to take care of some other real life things, and as soon as I got back to the game, it's like, oh yeah, you need to start drinking. I was like, so, like I said in some of my other videos about Invictus, make sure you are hydrating to stay healthy, because otherwise your character will die at the Invictus show floor, and it'd be kind of a bit of an embarrassment. Alright, so Aegis Dynamics. This room here on the side is pretty much the Avenger room, plus the Aegis Eclipse in the middle. Avenger Titan Renegade. This is a special variant of the Avenger. Avenger series has both a cockpit access via a ladder, plus in the back there's a ramp that you can use to access a room in the back, and then you can go through here, and you have your bed and a little bit of storage and component access here. It's a really good starter ship. Definitely, a lot of people recommend the Aegis Avenger series as their starter ships, especially the Titan, because the Titan has this little bit of cargo bay, a little bit of a cargo bay back here that you can use to do box missions plus some other missions in game. You can even probably do light salvage and light mining with the hand tool. Get one of those you need a 1 SCU box at the cargo stations in orbit above the major landing zones. Buy that 1 SCU cargo box, load it into here, and then basically use that to store your hand minables that you get throughout your adventure. The Renegade version has a slightly different loadout and paint job than the regular Titan. That's pretty much all there is. That's the only difference between the Titan and the Renegade, the base Titan and the Renegade. I want to see what this one is here. This is the Stalker. The Titan is one of those two over there. We'll get to that. We'll get to the base Titan in a little bit. Stalker. Yep, game paused there for a bit. That happens. The Titan Stalker is the Bounty Hunter version, and was actually the OG version of the Titan Avenger. And it has these 6 pods here for storing bounties and transporting them. That gameplay is not implemented yet, although CIG kinda sorta seems to be wanting to get to that sooner rather than later, because there is currently a whole bunch of other bounty hunting gameplay in the game right now. But if you're thinking about getting into the bounty hunting gameplay loop, I would pick up the Stalker over the Titan, just because you already have those 6 cells for transporting prisoners already in the Stalker, and those will be implemented at some time. We'll cover the Eclipse in a little bit. Let's just stay focused on the Titans over here. I believe this one is... There we go. We'll go to the Titan next. So the Aegis Avenger Titan, like the Titan Renegade over there, this is the base model Titan. Highly loved by the community, highly recommended. It's not a bad starter. I give a little bit of cargo space back here for your various missions and operations. Again, you have your bed, you have your components, just like the other Avenger Titan variant, the Renegade. Again, community loves this. It's a really good starter ship. Definitely not a bad choice if you pick one up. There are some other options for starter ships that are a little bit more money, that give you a little bit more, but bang for your buck, Titan is always a good choice. Now, there is one more dedicated variant of the Avenger series, and that is the Warlock. And the Warlock basically rips out the back cargo bay, and instead of having cargo, either having cargo or prisoner cells, it has this giant EMP here. That giant EMP blocks access to your bed, so unfortunately you have to go in here and climb up into the actual cockpit, and then from the cockpit you can go back to your little bed back there. Just trying to see here, showcase this off. It's bugged. Oh well. That's life. And yeah, definitely be careful. These servers are getting hit pretty hard on Sunday here. I would not be surprised if they would be better tomorrow on a Monday, just because people are probably off from work today and hitting up the servers pretty hard. Now, Aegis Eclipse here. This is the stealth bomber of Aegis, one-man crew, and unfortunately, I bought the ship on LTI, and this is actually one of my unfortunate regrets of Star Citizen, I will say. I have very few regrets for ships, and I still have it, and I still use it every once in a blue moon if there's an event going on, or try to use it. The thing is with the Eclipse is it only has 2 guns, and these are the relatively smaller guns. So it only has 2 guns for self-defense, and its primary armament are the torpedoes in the torpedo bay, and it does have 3 size 9 torpedoes, which is half of which is half of the payload of the actual larger bomber, the Retaliator. Problem is that there are very few targets in game right now that really require a size 9 torpedo to deal with. Plus, you're at the mercy of the missile gods and what they feel like doing currently in Star Citizen. Sometimes missiles work very well and they track all the time and are deadly. Other times the missile AI and tracking system goes full derp and will completely not track and go dead on you, and you've just wasted 3 size 9 torpedoes on a target that basically then goes ahead and shoots you down because you didn't do any damage with it, and or your mechanics of the locking and firing kept on bugging out on you. So I would not recommend getting the Eclipse. It's a fun. I do enjoy. It's a really cool looking ship. Looks absolutely beautiful, but between the very pitiful self-defense weapons that it has and the fact that torpedoes can and will bug out on you, I cannot recommend getting this ship at this time. I'm quite sure if torpedoes start working and there are more juicier targets in the verse to go after, then the Stalker might, and the Eclipse might actually be a really fun ship to bring out every once in a blue moon. Going on, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go back to the main hull now. We're going to cover some of these larger ships here in the main hull. To start off, we have the Redeemer gunship up ahead. Redeemer gunship is an interesting choice. If you are a single player, it is basically nearly useless. If you have a crew of players, even just like one additional player for a crew of 2, but ideally if you have a crew of 3, this becomes a death machine. It has crew for 4, has beds for 4, so there's 4 possible long-term crew members on here, although there are slots for way more. You have plenty of cargo space for every crew member has their own wardrobe. Plus, there's 2 SCU of cargo space here for different mission boxes if you want to do this to do mission retrieval ops. So it is a very well armored. This is a ship very well capable of doing those kind of operations. Climb up this ladder here. And then we even have 4 additional drop seats, so you can carry 4 additional people for ground ops. Back room here, because that's the nose of the gunship up ahead. We have the rear turret over here, as well as a whole bunch of component bays. So that's, you have one of your gunners can be up there, manning the rear turret. You also have turret access for below you, down here. So there's a turret that's below. There's a large turret that sits below the ship, and you'll see that on the exterior. You can actually man that as a person. You can also man 2 remote guns, one that's on the actual tail, and then one that's on the chin pylon. And you actually have a pilot seat, and the pilot mans the 2 fixed guns on the inboards of the wings. I want to sit here in this chair, give you guys a good view of the field of view you get with the gunship. So you have a pretty good field of view, all things considered. There is this giant middle console that comes up ahead, but you still have fairly decent off to the sides and up ahead. And you even, really usefully, you actually do get a little bit of a cutout down below. But you're not, and obviously this is no fighter craft where it has really good visibility. It just has decent visibility here for a gunship, and that's really kind of is the thing with the Redeemer gunship, is that you are going to be very reliant on having people to crew the ship to man all the turrets, plus give you also like visibility on where threats are. The pilot can control the remote turret that's on the chin for additional firepower if that remote turret seat isn't being occupied. So you can fire and operate all the guns on this ship with only 4 people. But if you want more flexibility, you can bring on a 5th person and have that 5th person man an extra remote turret to get a little bit more control, as well as a bit more flexibility in what's firing on what. So that's basically the Aegis Redeemer. Like I said, fun ship. It is kind of expensive, so make sure you have people that you can reliably crew this ship with before you buy it. Else you'll be suffering quite a lot with trying to man and fly this ship, because you'll only have access to the pilot, like I said, this remote turret up here, plus these 2 fixed cannons right here, and you'll be missing out on the firepower granted by those two large pilot human control turrets up below there and up there, and this rear remote turret here giving you a little bit of coverage on the tail. Hello everyone, decided to take a little bit of a snack break now for my character, partly because I entered the Hammerhead and I was giving the start of the tour, and unfortunately it bugged out pretty bad. There's a section of the Hammerhead, at least on the show floor variant, where you'll step into and you'll basically start pretending like you're surfing midair. Yeah. Star Citizen, everyone. But thankfully, the rest of the ship seems to be perfectly fine, so in case you are wondering, on the Hammerhead, where are you? Let's see here. Oh, there we go, we had it. We are at
For centuries, Invictus has been
the front of the Hammerhead. Right there. So, we are currently inside the Hammerhead at the very front end. This is actually a docking collar that you can use to dock to stations. So that is actually a really cool feature of the ship. It's currently one of the few in-game right now that has docking enabled. And you can go ahead and close that door. Plus, you can also close the door. You can close the armored front of this as well. So you can have basically 2 levels of doors and airlock protection out the front, and then you can close this rear room, and then you have basically a perfect airlock, a more or less perfect airlock system for on the nose of the Hammerhead. Let's quickly go down to the bridge. And there are 2 ways to go down to the bridge. We have this ladder off here to the side, so we'll just go ahead and have our character jump down. Okay, whatever. And you can see that the bridge is actually underslung underneath the nose of the Hammerhead, which is a pretty cool design choice. As you can see, visibility is very much meh. You have no upward visibility because that's where the rest of the ship is. You do have decent downward-facing visibility, although that's not really the point of the ship. This ship isn't a ground attack ship. It's very much a anti-fighter frigate. So the whole idea is basically sort of like a flak barge or a AA cruiser. Its whole purpose is basically to be part of a fleet and throw up basically as much anti-aircraft fire as possible to shoot down any fighters or light bombers that might be in the area to make sure that your other ships that are more vulnerable, like say for instance a Hull C full of cargo, remain safe. So you have a pilot seat there and a co-pilot seat there. Here. And basically the ship is symmetrical all the way down the middle. So we're going to go ahead and use the right side. There is the two front turrets right in front of the nose, the docking collar in the nose, and right beside the bridge. Walk down, there's this cool little open spot in the middle of the ship so you get to see the outside world a little bit. Plus that's where you pick up the lift to go down for the crew. There's another lift in the back, but it's mostly meant for actual cargo, which is right there listed as the cargo and engine room. There are the second side turrets are located here, halfway through the ship. And in this little middle hallway, you have the captain's office here. So there's the captain's chair and his little office right here. And he has his own private bunk and private head, where he has his shower, toilet, and sink, as well as his own private closets for his own gear. So that's the captain, so that's room for one person. In the back, you towards the actual crew area, you have I believe this is the upper turret gunner. So there's a turret on top that provides coverage for the top of the ship. That's where you enter in for that turret. This lift takes you up to it takes you up to basically sort of where the cafeteria of the ship is. It's a little bit of an odd space, but we'll go ahead and go up there right now. So up here you do have access to a couple more components, but really the whole point of being up here mainly is to take care of eating. Because this is where you have your cafeteria, but you have a bit of storage for, I guess, memorabilia of the ship, mostly crew mostly a whole bunch of stuff for food prep. Pretty big food prep area because the ship does actually require quite a lot of crew. And you do actually have a window to the outside world. And now it is only on the right-hand side, so it's a little bit asymmetric there. But also back here, you actually have storage back here. So you can use this for basically storing a whole bunch of food. Probably also some other stuff for the crew back here. But I think it's primarily meant for food storage. But again, you can use it for also other sorts of FPS supplies for the crew in general. Now back at the very top of this small second deck, you have the cargo, you have the engineering room, and you can get a view of the cargo bay down below. Well, that is the rear access hatch for the rear turret, and you have an engineering station back here as well. We're going to go ahead, work our way back, because there is more stuff on the first floor. And I want to exit the ship through the cargo bay, so... Go. So while the captain does have his crew bunk as well as his office here, the crew members have their own separate bunk on basically the behind where you get access to the turret over there. So you have the crew quarters here, and there is a total of 8 crew. And I will say, this is a ship where you are going to need every single able-bodied person, or in this case, or basically every single player character at this point, to man this ship, because the ship has 6 turrets, and you're going to want every turret manned. Every turret not manned on a hammerhead drastically reduces its effectiveness. And then eventually you also want a co-pilot to help the pilot, who is going to likely be the captain, fly the ship. So that brings it up to 7 additional crew. And then you want to have an engineer, so that brings it up to 8 crew. So 6 gunners, 1 co-pilot, and an engineer to help try to manage and keep damage control on the ship, to do damage control on the ship to keep it fighting as long as possible. So you have 7. So there's your 8 crew members plus the captain. So this ship is the largest combat ship basically in game, with a crew of 9. For the 8 crew members, you have 2 separate showers and toilets. I believe the ones on the right are toilets. And basically on the left, it's your standard Aegis Dynamics showers. Nothing too crazy to see in here. We'll go ahead and show it off. And there's your showers. Also, I should quickly pop out here to show you one thing I did pass by. It's nothing too crazy. There's more component access, by the way, in this side little room here. Again, nothing crazy. There is another engineering panel back here, but these are side. I don't think these side rooms are going to be your main engineer stationed, but they are there for him just in case in case it needs to access more stations and or whatever. Fine, like maybe maybe the engineering station on the one side and up above or out of commission. He can use that station to do whatever he needs. Now back here in the cargo bay room, you have 2 suit lockers, which is useful because this room here opens out into the void. You have these very aggressive particle effects here with the 2 engines that operate, which man the hammerhead and give it the power it needs to fly around. You have this little bit of a cargo deck here, and this is really cool because you can actually carry some of the smaller ground vehicles. So the hammerhead can be used, therefore, as a pretty useful basic command or operations center for a small military org, where you can use it to fight off like a lot of fighter-sized targets with the hammerhead, or money doing bounties that way. And then if you want to do ground ops, fly this down to the surface of a planet, and then have a small APC, like probably he was thinking the size of a Ursa rover, to get like the most amount of people in the combat. Have an Ursa rover loaded up here, and then you can send them out to do the actual ground combat mission without risking your hammerhead getting into the face of a whole bunch of turrets. Also, I should keep in mind that there is a rear turret for the hammerhead right there, and the rear turret basically provides the last little bit of coverage. So you have 2 turrets on either side of the ship, port and starboard. You have 1 up above on the top of the ship, and then you have 1 turret facing stern to give you basically almost near 360-degree coverage on this anti-ship fighter frigate. So that's the Hammerhead, and that is indeed the biggest ship that Aegis Dynamics has brought to the show floor today. But it is not the last big ship. The next big ship is the Aegis Retaliator bomber. This is one of the older ships. This is one of the oldest ships in game, and it shows. Go over here. Tally has 2 side access elevators that you can use to get up. There we go. Come on, server. Stay alive for a little bit longer. There's also a docking collar down below here for reasons. And this is where things get interesting. So back there, that's the access to the rear turret of the ship. And the rear turrets, as well as the rear torpedo bay. Up front, you can actually open and close this door, and this leads out into basically the front bomb bay, where you have 4 size 9 torpedoes. Off to the right, there's actually there's a small room. And this is basically the ship's only shower and toilet in here. Go on to the right, on the left-hand side. get a view of the torpedo bay. And then you get to the front room where you have access to a lower turret that's on the front of the ship, as well as the bomber bomber pilot's seat up here. Now the bomber pilot actually has his own little room off to the side here. And you can see that he only has access to his own little personal bunk, a little bit and a very little minute amount of storage. The other crew members, who are all basically going to be gunners on the ship, live up here. We have access to a top turret in the front. And you have 6 bunks back here for the gunners and engineers. Thankfully, they do have quite a bit of skylight, so they can actually see the space above them, which is pretty neat. But it is kind of cramped in here. There is a gun rack also here for them, so you can store a whole bunch of FPS weapons up in here. See, it's kind of a, you can kind of tell sometimes with the animations and stuff that this is indeed an older ship. One of the very first ships they put in game, and they've repeatedly said that they wanted to go through here and touch it up a bit, which is needed. Now for the rear of the ship, we have an engineering bay here, as well as a view into the rear bomb bay, which carries 2 size 9 torpedoes, as well as access here towards the rear of the ship, where you have the other 3 remaining turrets. So you have a turret on the top right side and the top left side of the ship, and then you have this rear turret on the stern of the ship, or the rear of the bomber. There we go. As well as component access all throughout these different hallways. And again, there's your other turret for the other side of the ship. Thing with the Retaliator, I wouldn't recommend getting the ship. For 6 player, for 7 player, you would need 7 players to really fully crew the ship. One pilot, 5 turret gunners, and then an engineer. You could get away with only having 5 people fully crew the ship, where you don't need. We're currently engineering gameplay. You don't really need one right now, but you will in the future. Thing is, though, for 6 players to fully fly and crew this ship, to target only large-sized capital ships, which aren't really common in game, it's kind of a bit of a, it's not really worth the money. I would even recommend getting the Eclipse over the Retaliator, just because it's a lot easier as a Retaliator owner to, it's easier as an Eclipse owner to just take out a ship that you only need to crew yourself. You have half the payload capacity of a Retaliator, and then go out and do the mission, come back, and then all the profits from that mission are yours. In a Retaliator, you have twice the torpedo load, but in order to make sure that your ship is okay, you're going to need to then pay a whole bunch of people to be gunners. Now, could you get away with fewer gunners and be okay? You might be, but you might not be. And that's really the problem with the Retaliator. Plus, it's also more money than a... Yeah, I do think it is slightly more money than a Eclipse, so... Hard pass on both, but I would absolutely not get a Retaliator, at least at this time. Now, for other ships, here, because this is the last room that Aegis Dynamics has taken up in this show floor, we have the Vanguard series. Harbinger here is the bomber variant of the Vanguard series, which are all long-range fighters. The Vanguard series is actually a pretty unique series. It is a long-range fighter, and it can actually cross the Stanton system on internal tanks, so on its own internal tanks without having to refuel, which is a plus. It can be piloted solo, because it has 4 nose-mounted bespoke guns that can be swapped out for different types, as well as a underslung mount for 1 turret that can be fired and controlled. But it can also be multi-crewed, and every single variant, except for the 1 dropship variant, has 2 beds, so you can actually, so this is indeed intended for a 2-crew person. And if you do actually pick someone up for a multi-crew gameplay, you can have them man a turret, and they can actually help to either get enemy ships off your back, or help pour additional firepower onto a opposing target. The Harbinger variant here, its special gimmick is that, unlike the other variants, it actually has size 5 torpedoes that it can deploy and fire out. So you will be able to use this as more of an aggressive, like a bomber variant. All Vanguard series have personal storage lockers, as well as gun racks, as well as a small little area for preparing food, and a toilet and shower combo with a sink. And like I said, 2 beds. The only variant I believe that does not have that is the dropship variant, like I mentioned previously. Speaking of the dropship variant, we have this here with the Vanguard Hoplite. This is probably one of your better choices right now for a dropship in-game, if you really want one. It has 4 nose-mounted cannons here, as well as the Gatling gun on the nose, like with all the other Vanguard series ships. However, it removes all the crew accommodations for a giant gun rack, as well as 6 drop sheets for infantry. And really, for basically doing FPS gameplay, keep in mind that you're not going to be able to really get a whole bunch of people to join up with you unless you're part of a larger org. So having 6 drop sheets is actually pretty much that's a really nice, healthy number of seats. You're balancing at this point the number of people you can carry into battle with like how big the ship is, how capable is it of doing other jobs, is it capable of fighting its way through stuff. The Vanguard Hoplite here is a really good balance between a fighter and a dropship. It also has its own turret up above. You should be able to access, as well as its own pilot seat. I'll showcase the pilot seat in the variant that I have. Come on, door. Here we go. See here. There's the turret up there. We'll cover the other Aegis fighters in a little bit in the middle, but we're going to cross the show floor and go to over to the Sentinel variant. The Sentinel variant is the E-Warfare variant, and this is very much meant to deal with electronic warfare. So its turrets is more meant for like electronic warfare stuff. So it's in the future going to have more equipment dedicated to just doing that. It has a dedicated engineering station as well for electronic warfare gameplay, all these server racks, all the fun electric warfare equipment, 2 beds, pilot seats, and your standard food, kitchen, and bathroom combo right here. As you can see, the toilet folds in and out. So go ahead and put that back. Now, the variant that I have, and the one that I actually do use every once in a blue moon, because it is useful for certain missions as well as certain events, is the Vanguard Warden. Now, the cool thing, like I said, is this is very much the standard issue fighter variant. So this is what I like to use if I'm doing missions that are like all across the verse, mainly because it's, like I said, it's large fuel tanks, get you basically anywhere that you need to in the Stanton system. Plus, then once you get there, you actually have a decent amount of firepower to deal with threats. As always, standard issue equipment. You have your toilet, your shower right there, storage for some of your gear right there, a weapons rack for FPS gear, you have your little kitchen right here. As you can see, like every Vanguard, like a lot of the Vanguard variants, they all have these in different areas, but they all have them at least. You have a little bit of an engineering station here to figure out what's going on the ship, manage systems on long-haul flights and the like. A bit more avionics access here for more component gameplay. Your 2 beds, You have your turret here. If you want to have a person man a turret, you can go ahead and have them man it right there. More avionics equipment down here, which is pretty neat. As well as you can open and close all these doors. Especially now that component gameplay is in, you're definitely going to want to know where all those are, so you can swap them out on the fly. And then we have your pilot's chair right here. Now for the Vanguard series, they have decent visibility all around. Definitely decent visibility off to the sides, a little bit up to the top, quite a bit of good, and a decent amount of visibility up to the front. This is not a high visibility craft. Once we get to more of the lighter fighter series over there, you'll see what a cockpit with really good visibility is. But it's really good enough. It's really good for the Vanguard series because most of its guns are fixed. So you don't really need sideways visibility too much. This is very much a fighter that focuses on long range combat as well as keeping targets in its nose up front, because, like I mentioned in the other previous variants, this also has the fixed guns up front. Those are, on the Warden variant, those are laser cannons, and you also have this big giant Gatling gun on the nose. As well as all the Vanguard series, I do believe, have their own missile loadouts as well. I know for the fact for the Warden, for instance, has larger missiles that are underslung here, as well as some smaller missiles that pop out from up top. So, really good choice if you're looking for a fighter that has a lot more range, and if you're expecting to occasionally have a second person be crew. You don't need the second person to make this ship combat effective, but it is recommended. Now for ships that are a bit more of the single player variety and a lot more agile than the Vanguard series, we have the Aegis Sabers and the Gladius Valiant. Now the Aegis Saber is a bit more of the medium fighter. It is more agile than the Hornet, and it's supposed to be slightly more stealthy as well. But it is personally one of my favorite combat ships in game for dogfighting. It has 4 gun mounts. I believe they're all size 3 mounts. And you can definitely have a lot of fun with the guns and really start racking up damage with all 4 guns bearing down on a target. Plus, its maneuverability means you can actually keep those guns on target. Also, as one of its as a relatively new ship, it doesn't suffer quite the bugs that the Hornet did, although that was a bug that might be related to it being a show variant, a show floor version right here, where it didn't open up the cockpit, but oh well. As you can see, Saber series has quite good visibility, similar to the Vanguard Warden, but it's just slightly better, slightly thinner rails. You get more visibility up top. Displays are a little bit lower. But overall, really good visibility. Plus, you have the 4 Panther repeaters. So it's a really good balance. It's a really good amount of firepower that you get with this ship. Plus, underneath the ship, you do actually, right there, have access to some missile bays. The Comet is a basically slightly different loadout. It's similar to the Titan Renegade, where it's basically the same effective base ship as the Saber that it's built off of, but the Saber Comet basically has a different paint scheme and a different weapons loadout. Plus, it has a blue tinted cockpit as opposed to the red tinted cockpit of the base Aegis Saber. And lastly, we get to the old standby of Star Citizen, the Aegis Gladius. This is the Valiant variant of the Aegis Gladius. The standard Aegis Gladius, very much, again, very similar to this. Different paint job and different weapons loadout. The laser repeater here in the base variant is instead replaced with a ballistic Gatling gun, and then you have energy repeaters on the wings instead of these energy cannons. And it's a slightly different missile loadout variant as well. I don't believe there are size 1s here. There's like 2 size 2s and then 1 size 3 on the base variant as well. And Aegis Gladius is very much CIG's baby, because this is going to be your primary ship in Squadron 42 for at least the first half of the campaign. And as such, it is very much a ship that they always put their latest and greatest tech into as sort of a test bed. So recently, it has gotten access to storage here. So you can actually have personal storage on the ship. So you can take this out on a combat mission, and then if you want to do FPS missions, you can load a little bit of extra gear in the back for those. It has also access to all of its components as well. There's even a weapon access here that I don't know if it's fully working yet, but you can actually place guns onto here in the future. And again, this is all work done for Squadron 42. You can go on this side. You have access to other components here as well as the pilot's canopy. And this is where you're going to find, again with that weird bug, this is where you're going to find a cockpit with a significant amount of visibility. So, as you can see, you have basically unimpeded visibility all around. As the game stalls, there we go. Thankfully, we are ending up our tour with this ship, and as well as you have the this det cord canopy shatter device, and this is something that actually is used in, I believe, British aircraft in the real world, whereas with American aircraft, the canopy kind of separates and ejects outward. Instead, here, with the British design, their whole philosophy is they'll use a little bit of det cord here, and they'll actually shatter the canopy, and then you eject. So interesting that they actually took that idea and put it onto the Aegis Gladius. As well as, again, it's a little bit of an older style cockpit. This is one of their, Aegis Gladius was one of CIG's first fighters they put into the game. I remember buying the base package with the Gladius and the Squadron 42 pack, as well as Star Citizen. So this is a ship that I've had since more or less the beginning. And it's pretty good overall as a light fighter. Pretty maneuverable, pretty agile. It can't quantum across the entire system, so keep in mind if you're doing combat missions, you're going to want to plan out your route carefully to make sure you don't run out of quantum halfway through your mission. But generally speaking, if you stay within a planetary system, like say you only stick around to ArcCorp or you only stick around to Microtech, this ship has enough quantum and enough hydrogen fuel to take care of all your fuel needs within that planetary system, and then you just, at the end of running combat missions for your play session, dock, refuel, rearm, and the next day you'll be good to go. So, with that, canopy rises, and that's it for Aegis here at the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo Invictus launch week. I will say, I do believe that you can possibly still get a Aegis Gladius, or sorry, not Gladius. It is Gladius. I was thinking of a Gladiator, which is another ship. I do believe you can get the Aegis Gladius as a starter pack still. If you can't, and you are really interested in doing combat in Star Citizen, the Gladius is a really good standard fighter craft that you can start out with, and it doesn't cost usually too much money to buy one. I believe you can get it for $90, which is getting up there. Which is, yeah, it's quite a bit of money to spend, but it is it's a good ship to start getting into the combat gameplay with, and in the scheme of Star Citizen ships, isn't that horrendously expensive. But if you don't want to buy one with real cash, you can always go ahead, earn it in game. Shouldn't be super expensive to earn in game. So go ahead. I highly recommend my most recommended ship of Aegis Day. If you want to buy one, is the Aegis Gladius here. Really fun ship, really maneuverable, relatively cheap, and it still packs quite a decent bit of punch. Saber is another good choice if you're flying solo, if you want a little bit more punch and you want a little bit of a heftier craft, but Gladius Valiant will suit you just perfectly fine. The Vanguard series, not too bad. It's especially if you're doing missions all over the verse. The range helps, but it's a little bit sluggish. Firepower isn't. It's good, but it's not quite as punchy as it could be. Hoplite here is a really good dropship.
Aegis Dynamics back to Invictus launch.
If you're a part of an org, I'd pick one up. Otherwise, you really don't. I really wouldn't bother getting one. And with the Vanguard series in general,
Blast was draped in shadow.
they're worth it. They're worth it, but I would definitely rent one out, try it out, and also see if it's worth just buying with in-game cash. And that's it for Aegis Day at Invictus. I'm gonna go ahead here and make my way up to the main hall. So Aegis Day is today, Sunday, and tomorrow on Monday, and then I do believe it for at least us on the East Coast, it'll be here with us until part of the way through Tuesday. And after that, Anvil Aerospace is up next. Anvil Aerospace is going to bring quite a lot of ships to the forefront, including popular ships like the Hornet, which is a medium fighter. You have the Gladius, the Gladiator, not the Gladius, but the Gladiator, which is a light bomber, as well as quite a few other combat variants of their own. So I'm gonna slide into here and sign off for today. This has been this is Loco S signing out from Invictus Launch Week for the second manufacturer Aegis, and I'll see you all on Tuesday when we go over Anvil Aerospace. Until then, see you around.